Just when it looks like Bob's about to commit some sibling smushing, Marge and Homer arrive with help to show up and save the day.
How dare you torture my children with Mozart!
What it is, guys? It's your boy BlastphamousHD. And who's your favorite character on Simpsons? Wait, don't answer. My favorite is Sideshow Bob, because he was into the ripping and the tearing. Not like in spring break, vacationing, swimming times, but I'm talking about the ripping and the tearing that Dexter should have been doing a lot of years in prison for. I don't even know if he ever got caught. Did he ever get caught? Today we're here to check out a video called Sideshow Bob's Craziest Plotlines. Let's do this.
Here are 10 of the craziest Sideshow Bob plotlines in Simpsons history. We might as well begin with the episode that started it all, right? Behold, our first run-in with the criminal that is Sideshow Bob. Season 1's Crusty Gets Busted starts with Bart, Lisa, and Maggie glued to the TV watching their favorite clown, Crusty the Clown. And in typical Crusty fashion, the show opens with Crusty launching onto the screen, literally in a motor car. Poor Sideshow Bob is once again playing the unwilling punching bag and gets shot out of a cannon. Apparently, that's what one viewer wanted for her birthday. No cake, just human cannonballs. Meanwhile, an Itchy and Scratchy episode starts playing and Marge isn't happy about it.
What a senseless violence.
Homer is on his way home when he stops for ice cream at the Quickie Mart, and he gets a front row seat to Krusty robbing Apu at gunpoint.
Hand over all your money in a paper bag.
Back at the house, everyone else is getting tortured by Patty and Selma's vacation photos, but Homer is still rattled by what he saw and heads straight to the police, and they identify Krusty as the robber.
Ready, Mr. Simpson?
Yes, sir.
Send in the clowns.
Finally, some good news for Homer. He dodges the rest of that slideshow. But then the TV blares the news of Krusty's arrest, and Marge, along with Patty and Selma, is less than thrilled to hear Homer gossiping on tape. Bart is crushed. Krusty is a criminal? Kent Brockman reports on Krusty's upcoming trial. It's juicy. Krusty's got a pacemaker, he's lost a lot of money gambling. Well, that one isn't a shocker. And worst of all, Reverend Lovejoy is calling for a public burning of Krusty merch. Of course he is. Bart and Lisa watch in disbelief as Krusty shuffles into court looking way less colorful than usual. No makeup, no giant clown shoes. He's not looking great, to say the least. Bart's not ready to give up hope, though. Something's off, and it's not just Apu's questionable microwaved burritos. In court, Homer's testimony confirms it, and Krusty's found guilty, but Bart can't let go.
I'll never forgive you for making me say this, but you're smarter than me. So, you with me? Yeah, man.
Bart and Lisa team up and head to the Quickie Mart where they discover two big clues. The robber heated up a burrito, something Krusty's pacemaker would not allow, and the robber was reading, but Krusty can't read. How did everyone miss this? Oh, right, it's Springfield. Bart and Lisa know who might have the answers. Sideshow Bob. But, surprise, surprise, Bob isn't sad about Krusty's arrest. In fact, his sadness quickly morphs into his manic laughter. They go see him at the studio where Bob tries to convince Bart that Krusty's guilt is legit. But when Bob grumbles about the big shoes to fill from his cannon launching days, Bart has a light bulb moment. Homer stepped on the robber's foot and he screamed in pain. Krusty's feet are tiny, but Bob's are enormous. Ding ding ding! To out Sideshow Bob, Bart smashes his clown shoe with a mallet and he shrieks just like the robber. We got him, guys, guilty. His giant feet betray him, and Bob's dramatic confession is straight out of a Shakespearean villain monologue. Turns out Bob framed the Krusty because he was tired of getting humiliated for laughs, while Krusty gambled away the show's profits. He figured with Krusty out of the way, he could finally turn the show into something intelligent, because nothing says smarter like framing a clown.
I would have gotten away with it too if it went for these meddling kids.
Take him away, boys.
Bob gets hauled off to jail for the first time. The charges against Krusty are dropped, the town sheepishly apologizes, and Krusty is back on top. Homer even offers an awkward apology for, pointing the finger at him in court. The episode wraps up with Bart proudly hanging a picture of himself and Krusty on his wall, and all is right in Springfield once again. But can framing someone for crime be worse than trying to kill Bart's aunt? So at the start of Season 3's Black Widower, the Simpsons are sitting down to dinner with Aunt Selma and her new boyfriend, which sounds pretty standard.
Everyone, I'd like you to meet.
Until it turns out to be none other than Bart's archenemy, Sideshow Bob. Yep, the same guy who tried to turn Bart into a pancake more times than you can count. Over dinner, Bob launches into a dramatic retelling of his time in prison, where he almost won an Emmy only to have it snatched away. Oh, and somewhere between bites of mashed potatoes he casually drops that he did want to kill Bart, past tense of course, but claims he's changed. Sure, Bob. Then he reveals the heartwarming tale of how he met Selma through a prison pen pal program. Apparently, a few letters and boom, he's a reformed man, all thanks to love. Next thing you know, he's out of the big house, and surprise, he proposes to Selma right there at the dinner table. Naturally, Selma's all in, because nothing says romance like a guy with a rap sheet and a vendetta against your nephew.
Dear Selma, your latest letter set off a riot in the maximum security wing of my heart.
Bart, on the other hand, is not buying any of this New Leaf nonsense, and would you? Sideshow Bob may have buried the hatchet, but Bart's pretty sure it's just hidden behind Bob's back. Later, Bob pops up on Krusty's show to tell the clown that there's no hard feelings, but Bart is sweating over the fact that this guy is about to become Uncle Bob, the uncle who swore revenge after Bart sent him to jail for framing Crusty for armed robbery. You know, the typical family drama. The wedding almost gets called off when Bob admits he hates Selma's beloved show, MacGyver.
First of all, he's not a genius. He's an actor.
But fear not, Homer swoops in with some sage marriage advice, explaining that when Marge watches her shows, he just goes for a walk or downs a few beers and comes back still head over heels. Problem solved, right? So fast forward to the big day. Everyone's all smiles, except Bart, who's still on high alert. Cut to the honeymoon, and wouldn't you know it, while MacGyver is playing, Sideshow Bob tries to take Selma out in the murdery way. But Detective Bart realizes Bob's plan after Bob was so adamant on getting a gas fire. The only person who wouldn't smell a gas leak is Aunt Selma after she's permanently lost her taste and smell. Bart gets her out before the explosion and explains Bob's plan. Bob's dragged back into jail, vowing to return once again. Everyone thanks Bart for his suspicion of Bob, and the day is saved until the next time Bob escapes, of course. Bob was back in Season 5's Cape Fear, which features one of his wildest schemes yet. It all started when Bart checked the mail and found out he was receiving some less than kind letters. Not the warm, "Dear Bart, how are you?" kind. Nope, they're written in blood and full of threats. Naturally, Bart becomes paranoid. The mystery deepens when one letter is just in black ink, casually saying, "I kill you, scum." Turns out that one's from Homer, who's still nursing a grudge after Bart slapped a wide load sticker on his rear end. Couldn't he tell by the spelling? Over at Bob's parole hearing, Sideshow Bob's attorney is doing his thing, twisting logic like a pretzel. Selma's recounting how Bob tried to kill her, and you'd think that would be enough to deny him bail, but his lawyer makes a good point.
How many people in this court are thinking of killing her right now?
Who hasn't wanted to strangle Selma? The parole board's concerned about Bob's Die Bart Die tattoo, but Bob, cool as ever, says it's just German for the Bart, the. Nailed it, and just like that, Bob's a free man. Later, the Simpson family heads to the movies, but of course, they're seated behind a guy who's obnoxiously laughing and blowing cigar smoke everywhere, but Homer's had enough and tells the guy to knock it off.
Oh, really? Now that's too much.
Shocker, it's Sideshow Bob. Bob reveals he's the mastermind behind the blood-soaked hate mail. Naturally, Marge storms off to Chief Wiggum, whose best response is to slap the whole family into the witness relocation program. Now meet the Thompsons, folks, living their best life at Terror Lake. In their convertible, they're singing Three Little Maids, blissfully unaware that Bob's clinging to the underside of the car. As they hit speed bumps, splash coffee out the window, and plow through a cactus field, Bob's getting the real Terror Lake experience. Once they arrive, the Simpsons move into a houseboat, which seems perfect, except Bob's still on their trail. It wouldn't be a Simpson episode if Bob didn't get repeatedly whacked in the face by a rake, but is 12 pushing it? Bart starts to get suspicious again, of course, but wouldn't you? His paranoia hits peak when Homer, in true world's worst dad fashion, bursts into Bart's room. First with a knife, to offer brownies obviously, and then, even better, with a chainsaw and hockey mask, just casually asking, because that's how you comfort your kids, right? As things escalate, Bob sneaks aboard their houseboat with a machete in hand, ready to cut the rope and send the Simpsons drifting into the night.
Hello, Bart.
Mom! Dad!
Your family can't help you now.
He ties up the family, Homer probably thought it was a new kind of bedtime routine, and heads for Bart. Trapped with Bob and a swarm of alligators and electric eels outside, Bart's only option, stall. He requests Sideshow Bob perform the entire score of HMS Pinafore, and oh boy does Bob deliver. Costume changes, props, the whole 9 yards, but just as Bob's about to end his impromptu Broadway run with a machete finale, the boat hits a rock. Nice timing. And the police show up to cart Bob off. Again. But you and I both know he won't be gone for long, huh? And when he returned, he'd partake in something truly evil. Politics. Sideshow Bob Roberts starts in prison where Bob has had enough of the cafeteria's questionable meatloaf and calls up Springfield's resident conspiracy nut and right-wing talk show host Birch Barlow so he can complain about his unjust incarceration.
That That sounds like Sideshow Bob.
As expected, Birch riles up all of Springfield to believe Bob's been wronged, except for the rational trio, Bart, Lisa, and Marge. Facing a mob of protesters who probably just wanted an excuse to skip work, Mayor Quimby releases Bob. The people of Springfield rejoice, because you and I both know that the people of Springfield are pretty dumb.
You are hereby granted a full and complete pardon.
At a secret Republican meeting, Bob announces his master plan. He's running for mayor. Bart and Lisa know they can't let a maniac take the reins, so they team up with Quimby's campaign. Lesser of two evils, right? Bob steals the seniors' votes by promising the Matlock Expressway, and by pretending to care about their endless stories about lost dentures and the good old days. The real disaster strikes during the live debate. Quimby is battling the flu and shows up doped on meds so strong he's practically hallucinating. He tries to debate, but it's like watching a sloth try to run a marathon. The cherry on top, even Homer Simpson is torn. Sure, he's against Bob's pro-Bart murder stance, but Bob's Selma killing policy? Well, we can all see the merit in that.
And the results are in.
In the end, Springfield votes Bob into office with a staggering 100% for Bob, and somehow 1% for Quimby. Remember the 1% margin of error, too. The next morning, Bob's got bulldozers outside the Simpsons' house. Apparently, the Simpsons live smack in the middle of Bob's precious Matlock Expressway. They've got 72 hours before their house and, well, them, get flattened, while Marge tries to fight City Hall with nothing but stubbornness, and Bart and Lisa smell something fishy about the election. Lisa digs through voter records, like she's on some kind of political CSI show, but hits a dead end. Lisa gets an anonymous tip, so she, Bart, and Homer head to a secret meeting in a parking garage.
You're on the right track. Follow the names.
How the hell do you know?
Enter Smithers, the world's least convincing secret informant, who spills the beans on Bob's shady voting tactics. Turns out Bob's votes came from the dead and their pets, including the Simpsons' dearly departed Snowball. In court, Bart and Lisa pull the old "you're not smart enough to do this on your own" trick, and Bob is proud and egotistical, so of course he confesses to everything, including that Barlow was just his pawn. He also takes a weird detour into why Springfield secretly wants a cold-hearted dictator, but hey, this is Bob we're talking about. By the time Bob realizes he's talking his way back into jail, it's too late.
Only I could have executed such a masterpiece of electoral fraud.
Quimby gets his mayor gig back, and as for Bob, he's off to row for Yale's prison crew team, plotting his next comeback and dreaming of finally crushing Bart right after defeating Princeton. Priorities, right? Now let's move on to another Bob episode, shall we? Let's talk about the time we met his brother. Surely Bob's brother is better than him, right? Brother from another series starts in the prison cafeteria where Crusty the Clown hosts a very special guest, his old frenemy, Sideshow Bob, who is now rocking these prison stripes like a twisted fashion icon. Bob takes the mic and casually lists off his greatest hits of villainy like he's recapping a vacation itinerary. From framing Crusty for armed robbery to multiple assassination attempts, Bob's been busy. Oh, and let's not forget his hobby, trying to murder Bart Simpson during his downtime.
And sure, he's probably so insane with rage that he'd butcher you horribly if he could.
Naturally, Bart's watching all this unfold live and spirals into pure sweaty panic. After a stirring performance in the prison choir, Bob is declared reformed by Reverend Lovejoy. Just like that, he's freed into the custody of his brother, Cecil, who's still salty that Bob stole his dream job as Krusty's sidekick. Cecil has some big plans to build a dam, and because he's clearly lacking a sense of irony, he hires his brother, the guy who once tried to blow up the town with a nuclear bomb, to help. Great plan, guys! Bart's got his trusty sidekick Milhouse, and they're on full spy mode, tailing Bob because Bart's convinced the guy is still evil. While Bart's trying to stay hidden, Bob spots him, and casually waves with a cheerful, because nothing says "I'm not a villain" like greeting your intended murder victim with a smile.
Hello, Bart!
Bob even explains to Cecil that Bart's just shy because, he's tried to kill him so many times. Totally normal. At the dam, things get even wilder. Bob's working with Cletus and his gang of cousins, and somehow, one of them manages to cement his dog into the structure. Yes, a literal dog statue in the dam. Add that to the porta potties being turned into smokehouses, and it's a construction site straight out of a horror show. Bart's still convinced Bob's up to something evil, so he teams up with Lisa. They break into Bob's trailer, find a briefcase full of stolen cash, and things take a turn. But plot twist, it's actually Cecil who's the criminal mastermind, planning to blow up the dam and frame Bob, because sibling rivalry just isn't spicy enough without a little attempted murder.
Bart, For once, I'm not trying to kill you.
Bob helps Bart and Lisa escape from certain doom, even swinging like a Tarzan on a dynamite wire to save Bart from a long drop into the river. Cecil is determined to make this family feud truly memorable and tries to blow up the dam anyway, but Bob cuts the wire, saving the town and crushing his groin on a drainage pipe. Ouch. In the end, Cecil is arrested. Bob accidentally vows revenge on Bart again thanks to a sneaky trick from Cecil, and they both end up back in prison. The town floods a little, but nobody seems too bothered. Oh, and Bob wins the coveted top bunk in the cell. Score. At this point, you might think Bob's wild and criminal schemes were over, but you would be totally wrong. Our next Sideshow Bob episode takes us overseas, far from the safe spaces of Springfield and closer to Bob's evil grasp. When Mr. Burns' ancient car finally kicks the bucket, he treats himself to a shiny new ride.
I need you to pick up my car at the factory in Italy and ship it directly back to me. I'll save thousands in taxes.
And he sends Homer Simpson on a little Italian road trip to pick it up. Of course, in true Simpson fashion, the entire family tags along because, well, it's Italy. How can you say no? The trip starts off with picturesque countryside tours and pasta galore until, surprise, surprise, a giant wheel of mortadella crushes their fancy new car. And naturally, the car's insurance doesn't cover cheese-related accidents. So they push the mangled car to the nearest village, hoping for some help. An elderly woman kindly directs them to the mayor, who supposedly speaks English. But the mayor is none other than...
Sideshow Bob!
Cue the collective horror as Bob and the Simpsons scream at the sight of each other like it's a horror movie. Turns out, Bob, after his years-long murder phase, fled to Italy to start over. He even used his freakishly large feet to stomp grapes into wine, which apparently won over the locals. They liked him so much they made him mayor. Go figure. Bob, now a family man with a wife and son, begs the Simpsons to keep his murderous past a secret. They agree, mostly because they need the car fixed. Everything's going fine. The Simpsons are having a great time in this mafia-run village, and Bob's living the dream, until Lisa has one too many sips of wine and starts spilling the tea about Bob's attempted murder hobby. Awkward. In her drunken stumble, she yanks off Bob's suit, revealing his old prison uniform. Why Bob decided to keep that as a wardrobe staple, we may never know. Chaos ensues as the villagers discover their beloved mayor is a former American convict. They strip him of his mayoral title, and the Simpsons, now with their car miraculously fixed, make a run for it. But Bob's not one to take this lightly.
Definitely can't take that lightly.
I hereby swear.
He vows revenge and hops on a motorcycle to chase them down. What follows is a wild ride. Homer somehow manages to drive through ancient Roman ruins. Bob's wife and son catch up, and the Terwilliger family has a nice little bonding moment, deciding to kill the Simpsons together. Because nothing says family time like a murder plot. The Simpsons spot a bus advertising Crusty the Clown performing in Italy. They rush to the Coliseum and get cast as extras in his show. Krusty, famous in Italy, who would have thought? But just when you think they're safe, Bob and his family corner them on stage. Krusty pulls a disappearing act, leaving Bob to give a dramatic performance. Naturally, he nails it and gets a standing ovation, because even when he's about to commit murder, he's still a class act. But before Bob and his family can go full villain, Krusty's limo swoops in to save the Simpsons, though Krusty admits he's only helping because he needs accomplices to smuggle stolen artifacts back to the States. I'm not surprised with Krusty. As the Terwilligers walk off, evil grins in place, it's clear. This isn't the last time they'll try to ruin the Simpsons' vacation. Imagine Sideshow Bob being your neighbor. That is the sort of nightmare the Simpsons had to confront in our next entry on the list, the Bob Next Door. Springfield is so broke that residents are freaking out and afraid of the future. Mayor Quimby kicks off a budget slashing spree because he thinks it'll help, cutting school days shorter.
Good morning, children. Today we are instituting shortened school hours.
How shortened?
Take them home, Otto.
And above all, releases all low-level criminals from their prisons. Because what's Springfield without a few extra criminals? Naturally, everyone starts fleeing the town faster than a Sideshow Bob jailbreak, and the house next to the Simpsons goes up for sale. Homer, of course, falls in love with it. But before he can sign on the dotted line, some guy named Walt Warren snags the house while Homer is busy drooling over loan paperwork. Homer's loans hit a slight snag. Turns out one of the banks, Iceland National Bank, goes belly up, which makes the entire nation of Iceland want to murder him. You know, standard Homer stuff. Walt moves in, and Lisa and Marge immediately peg him as a hipster. Bart introduces himself, but when Walt says, "Hello, Bart," with that unmistakable voice, Bart freaks out.
Huh? Say that again.
He's sure this guy is Sideshow Bob in disguise. Everyone else shrugs him off. Bart isn't buying it, so he sets out to expose Walt by playing Gilbert and Sullivan music, figuring Bob can't resist singing along.
Sorry, gentlemen, I'm not a fan of that particular style of music.
But when Walt claims he's more of a country fan, Bart sneaks into his house for proof. Busted by Marge, she takes him to the actual Sideshow Bob in prison, where Bob is in full-on psycho mode, writing "Bart Simpson will die" all over his cell. Satisfied, at least for now, Bart backs off. The next morning, Walt invites Bart to a baseball game. When Walt doesn't turn toward the stadium, Bart smells trouble. Walt finally reveals his true identity, and of course, it's Sideshow Bob. He proves it by taking off his shoes to reveal those freakishly long feet. I'd recognize those feet anywhere. Bob is so relieved to be himself again that he immediately starts belting out his favorite Gilbert and Sullivan tunes. Back at the prison, the real Bob pulls off a slick escape by faking a medical emergency. He knocks out the guard, climbs the walls, dodges attack dogs, and runs straight to the Simpsons' house. Marge sprays him with a hose, and Homer slams a window on his neck. The intruder insists he's actually Walt, and when he shows them his normal-sized feet, things get even weirder.
I began by removing Walt's face. 5-second rule. That was the easy part. The hard part was removing my own face.
After a failed attempt of putting Walt's face on backwards, Bob used Walt's stock investments to buy the house next to the Simpsons. He's a criminal mastermind and a real estate savvy. At the 5 corners, where 5 US states meet, Bob unveils his evil plan to Bart. He's going to shoot Bart across state lines so that no one can prosecute him. He's literally planned the most complicated murder in history. This thing is complex even by Sideshow Bob's standards.
But their sum total is the greatest murder since Snape killed Dumbledore.
Bart thinks fast and hops into the same state as Bob to ruin the whole cross-state murder scheme. The two start a ridiculous game of hopscotch between state lines until Bob steps on a rake and takes it to the face. Just like old times, right? Frustrated, he's ready to just shoot Bart. Walt swoops in and demands Bob give his face back, but a bee buzzing under Bob's transplanted skin distracts everyone. Bob gets the upper hand again until Chief Wiggum shows up to save the day, tracking Bob through his eco-friendly hybrid car, which is secretly government monitored. Walt and Bob both get hauled off to jail, while the Simpsons return from their trip to Mexico. But all's not quiet for long. The house next door is back on the market, and surprise, a new Flanders relative, Ted Flanders, moves in. God, that might be worse than living next to Sideshow Bob. Did you know the Simpsons once killed off Sideshow Bob? Well, kind of. In true Bob fashion, not even death could keep him from seeking revenge on Bart. In season 19's Funeral for a Friend, Homer's mission to buy a simple battery takes a wild turn when he ends up signing up for a $200 TiVo and a 2-year subscription. Fast forward 2 hours, and Lisa's already elbow deep installing the new TiVo at home, because apparently she's the family tech support now. The Simpsons quickly discover the glorious power of their new gadget, skipping commercials left and right during Itchy and Scratchy episodes like they're avoiding a bad smell. Marge soon becomes a TiVo ninja and is skipping commercials so fast it's like they never existed, but her binge watch sessions soon spiral out of control. Feeling bad, Marge vows to catch up on all those ads she's been skipping. During her guilt-induced commercial binge, she sees one for Wes Dubner's world-famous family rib huts and decides the whole family just has to go. But things get weird fast. They pull up to an empty parking lot and the restaurant looks like the set of a horror movie. No tables, no chairs, and just the right amount of creepiness. The doors lock behind them and surprise, Wes Dubner reveals himself to be none other than Sideshow Bob in disguise. This guy loves a disguise.
That commercial was a trick, specifically designed to lure our family here.
Bob has a new plan. Strap a faulty laptop battery to a pile of TNT and let it overheat until, boom! Just as he's about to exit stage left, Lisa trips him up and misdirects him. Just seconds later, the battery explodes and knocks him out cold. Cue Kent Brockman reporting live at the scene of Sideshow Bob's latest genius failure. At Bob's trial, he does what any self-respecting villain would do, blames Bart. He claims Bart drove him to insanity, with his father, Dr. Terwilliger, painting a picture of poor innocent Bob as a victim of Bart's relentless torment. The jury is eating it up, but Bart is fuming and snatches a vial from Bob, flings it out the window, but wait, that was medicine for Bob's heart condition. Nice one, Bart. Naturally, Bob collapses in dramatic fashion. Dr. Terwilliger rushes over, and Dr. Hibbert confirms the worst.
This man is dead.
and you killed him.
The whole town turns up for the funeral, including Bob's entire family, and even Cecil gets a day pass from prison. Everyone's singing, mourning, and pretending like Bob wasn't a serial killer who tried to blow up the whole town every other Tuesday. Bart, not one for fake tears, storms off, muttering that Bob's death was clearly not his fault. Right? Then Cecil convinces Bart to say a final goodbye. Bart heads to the funeral home, and just as he's about to make peace, Sideshow Bob jumps out of the coffin like some evil jack-in-the-box. He quickly tosses Bart into the coffin and hits the switch to send him straight to the furnace.
Then let's give the people what they want.
Lisa, having her detective moment, realizes Bob wanted to get caught and the whole trial was a setup. Bob's family reveals they were all posing as cops and peel off their latex masks, proving that they were all accomplices. Bob's master plan is to swap Bart's ashes for his own, ride off into the sunset, and live happily ever after. Except, no. Just before Bart's a goner, the Simpsons burst in. Homer flings ashes into Bob's eyes and Marge hits the reverse switch. The cops show up, and Sideshow Bob is defeated but still curious and asks how Lisa figured out his elaborate plot. She casually points out the coffin made to fit Bob's giant feet because if you're really dead, why bother? In the end, Bob and his family are back behind bars playing cards in their prison cell, while Bob cackles away dreaming of yet another doomed revenge plot against the Simpsons. Some things never change. Sideshow Bob's Last Gleaming is an episode that begins with Crusty the Clown kicking off another crazy episode of his show with a thank you. He gives a big thanks to all the kids who generously donated cans, but not for the needy. No, for a very fun obstacle course. Bart and Lisa are living for it, especially Krusty's endless abuse of poor Sideshow Mel. Over at Springwood Minimum Security Prison, the inmates are laughing their orange jumpsuits off, much to the dismay of a brooding Sideshow Bob. The chaos makes him mess up the model that he's working on. Would you expect anything less than Bob? He gets so upset that Bob stomps over to the common room where the inmates are glued to the screen. One of them casually reminds Bob that he used to be Krusty's sidekick, which sends him spiraling into a rant about how TV is mindless drivel.
Oh, must you bray night and day at that infernal television?
Bob takes this moment to hatch a new plan while working at a local airfield, where the inmates are cleaning up for an air show. TV is rotting everyone's brains, so Bob figures he should just blow it all up. You know, yet another criminal mastermind scheme. As the entire town of Springfield, including the Simpsons, head to the air show for their usual dose of shenanigans, Bob sneaks into the hangar, posing as an Air Force colonel. What does he find? Oh, just a casual 10-megaton nuclear bomb. No biggie, right? While Colonel Happablap tries to kick off the air show, the screens are cut off, and the image is swiftly replaced by Bob's evil grin. He delivers a passionate speech about how life would be better without television, with just a tiny threat to blow up the whole town, unless they permanently turn off their TVs.
By the way, I'm aware of the irony of appearing on TV in order to decry it, so don't bother pointing that out.
Cue full-blown Springfield Panic. Bart and Lisa, of course, get separated from Homer and Marge in the chaos as everyone flees for their lives. As Bob's demands send everyone into a craze, Krusty refuses to back down. He's not giving up his precious airtime. Instead, he retreats to a civil defense shed and improvises the most half-baked, low-budget show imaginable. Bob watches from his stolen Duff blimp and is absolutely fuming. Bart and Lisa eventually stumble onto the Duff blimp. Bob is now just totally unhinged and tries to detonate the bomb, only to find out it's a total dud. No explosion, no fireworks, nothing. Nada. Total bust. This makes Bob angrier than ever. So he takes Bart hostage with a knife because of course that's his fallback plan. Lisa sneaks off and signals Bob's location to the authorities. Chief Wiggum shows up and predictably bungles things, while Bob decides to turn this into a kamikaze mission. He crashes the jet almost immediately and grabs the Wright brothers plane from the air show. Bob's grand plan? Crash the Wright brothers plane straight into Krusty's shack, while screaming, "Die, Krusty, die!" Of course, the old plane barely manages a bounce before sputtering out like a flat soda. Chief Wiggum and his crew finally arrest Bob as he whines about how cliched his evil plot was, and Bart is reunited with his family. But wait, there's more! Just as Bob is being dragged back to prison, some Air Force genius accidentally drives a tank over the Wright brothers' plane, crushing it to pieces. That'll cost them. The man who grew too much kicks off with pure chaos at Springfield Elementary's Taco Tuesday. It's like Black Friday day, but instead of flat screen TVs, it's all about those crunchy, delicious tacos. Kids are coming out of the woodwork like they've been starved for weeks. And then there's Lisa, who's not here for the tacos, but instead for some grade A Brainiac level drama. She discovers the cafeteria veggies are none other than GMOs. Shocker. Naturally, Lisa freaks out and pulls together a town meeting, but after a deep dive into science, she realizes GMOs might actually be saving the world. As Lisa continues her crusade, a Monsanto rep approaches her at a local fair and invites her for a little campus tour. And guess who's running the show? Well, it's our old nemesis.
Sideshow Bob!
Dr. Sideshow Bob.
He swears that he's totally done being bad. We've heard that one before. But surprisingly, Lisa buys into his intellectual vibes and the two bond over art. Bob and Lisa head to a museum for what should be a lovely day of art appreciation. That is until Bob saves Lisa from a near-death experience with a falling statue, showing off some Hulk-level strength. Lisa's shocked when Bob casually admits that they've been tweaking his DNA.
If I can genetically modify fruits and vegetables, why can't I modify me?
No big deal, right? Turns out this whole museum trip was a setup for him to swipe DNA from the world's greatest minds. Then Bart crashes the party, and Bob warns that his murderous tendencies are only one annoying tourist couple away from surfacing. Sure enough, some rando ticks him off, and he's chasing Bart and Lisa through the museum like he's training for the Olympics. They get cornered near a body of water, and in a last-ditch effort, Bart and Lisa plead for Bob to sing them a tune before he ends them forever. You know this is gonna work, so of course Bob obliges. Just when it looks like Bob's about to commit some sibling smushing, Marge and Homer arrive with help to show up and save the day.
How dare you torture my children with Mozart!
Lisa drops some Walt Whitman quotes, which hit Bob right in the feels. He suddenly realizes he's a full-on monster, and in classic over-the-top Bob fashion, he attempts to drown himself, only to remember that he has gills. Whoops. He waddles off in defeat, but not before stepping on an underwater rake and smacking himself in the face. One more time, right? And there you have it. A number of times when Sideshow Bob did what Sideshow Bob does best. Try to ruin the lives of the Simpsons and wreak havoc in Springfield.
Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comment section down below who your favorite Simpson character is. It's your boy BlastphamousHD. Twisms.